Okay, so imagine yourself 10 years from now. You guys all look pretty young, so I'm sure you're not having kids anytime soon. But 10 years from now, being at the hospital and taking home your newborn baby, and then, as a new parent, you're excited, and 10 days from the day you take him to the hospital or her, your baby dies on you. So it's very tragic, but it's actually the risk every parent takes when they take home their kid, and that is due to a lot of things, but what I'm going to talk to you today about is vaccinating your kid and why you should vaccinate your child. So I'm going to start off with telling you guys about the three main points. First is the argument that parents, so actually first is talking about how not vaccinating your child actually puts other kids at risk or adults. Second is talking about why some parents choose not to vaccinate, what their viewpoint is. And lastly, it's going to be about just kind of like a perspective of other countries that don't have vaccinations. So first off, let's talk about how the parents argue that making the choice to not vaccinate their children only affects their kids. That's not true at all. In fact, most kids are not. Your child has to be a certain age for him to receive his first vaccinations. I want to say it's about 10. I want to say it's first 10 days that your child receives the first set of vaccines. And sometimes your child can come across a person that doesn't have a vaccination, that has the flu, or any type of disease that they may have. They come see your child because obviously you just had a baby, everybody wants to visit you, and then now they're exposed to it, and your child doesn't have the immunity to fight it off. And another example would be patients that have low immune systems. For example, people that have cancer, HIV related, or elderly people. All those three people have a lower immune system, so they're more at risk at getting sick from people that carry these diseases. Like the main one is the flu. According to Well Health, about 12,000 to 56,000 people died in 2016 of flu, and it's I think I want to say it's actually the most common disease that we have here. And then now I'm going to talk to you guys about why parents choose not to vaccinate their kids. So I have a friend that just had a baby. She's actually a really close friend. And she decided not to vaccinate her child, right? And that's it's actually a big controversial thing right now because I think you guys are all aware that in Orange County and LA, we all have, it's kind of a trend to be very earthy and healthy, and everybody wants to obviously save animals, and it's a trend. So whether we like it or not, that's really what it is. It's a good thing, I think, because it is opening our eyes to a lot of things that we need to change. But other states, like back in the South, they don't do that. So it's kind of like I said, a trend. She chose to not vaccinate, and she kind of told me about it. And I asked her a question. I said, "Oh, so what are you gonna do when your kid wants to travel, right?" And she kind of oh well. She kind of got stuck on that question. And I think it just comes to show that a lot of people don't do the research before choosing not to vaccinate, and they kind of do it because it's like a thing that we're doing. We're trying to be healthier people, but in the process of that, sometimes you don't know how much you're actually hurting others and your child. And it's scary. It's something that it's hard to talk to someone about because it's so controversial because people don't want you to tell them how to take care of their children. But I think that doing research would actually help a lot. And it brings me to my second point of why they're choosing not to vaccinate. So first off, a lot of parents think that vaccinating their children is linked to autism. A study done by Andrew Wakefield in 1997 linked autism to vaccinations, but later that year, actually 1998, he got discredited because there was a lot of fraudulent information on that article. So there actually is no link according to the CDC. There is no link between, and they haven't found any research that actually links autism to vaccinations. And then second one would be parents think that religion reasons or harsh chemicals in vaccinations. A lot of vaccinations do have harsh chemicals, but I think it also goes back to kind of outweighing the good and bad. And I mean, it's kind of like, well, there is some harsh chemicals, but they are approved obviously by the government, and then, or do you want to just go ahead and expose your child to, any type of disease out there, because the risk of them dying on you is, it's a fact, it can happen. And then lastly, I'll talk to you about why, how other countries are not, how they're not as fortunate as we are. I think before, another thing to consider is we have the vaccinations available to us, and other countries don't. Like in Nigeria, a lot of the mortality rate for small children is actually really high because of that, because they don't have vaccinations available to them. So I think, to conclude, I think that people need to, really do the research before making a big commitment, something as big as that, and just really focus on researching the good and bad and outweighing, kind of what's better for yourself. Thank you.
So Mo, some thoughts?
I don't think he's here.
Mo, you're not here, huh? Okay, well. You've got some thoughts? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear them.
I like how you clearly state, I like your anecdote at the beginning, because at first I was like, babies, I'm like, shoot, I ain't trying to have no kids. So I like how your anecdote goes, and I like foreign people, especially us as young people, so when we get to that stage of our life that we should know, the benefits of, Only thing I say that, I thought was you was kind of doing what I do. You kind of get high pitched, and then your tone starts boiling down in a way. You kind of fidgeting a little bit because of nervousness. Overall, I thought your piece is pretty informative for the future parents of the world. So,
All right, well, you've got a pretty negative visualization at the beginning. I think you need to tie it in a little more closely to the notion of vaccinations. I do think that your purpose statement is relatively clear. I think one of the things that's missing is how common this is. The notion that parents might avoid vaccinating their child. I know that it does happen. I think you need to provide us with some information that suggests that this happens more frequently than we think, or that it's happening certainly more frequently than we want it to have happen. There's a preview of what your supporting structure is. That's good, and you do kind of follow that organizational pattern in the body of the speech. That's okay. The idea that there's going to be a potential problem in that first 10 days, I think is important. When does the vaccination kick in, for instance? What kinds of exposures are you dealing with? You've got two issues that you're dealing with. One is the threat to the child. The other is that the threat that the child might present to others. And I think you've kind of got those conflated into this section here, and it needs to be clearer. I think that the threat from the child comes much later when they are not vaccinated, as opposed to when they are, just young and 10 days old. It seems unlikely that they're going to be visiting their elderly HIV person who they're going to then give some disease to because they didn't get vaccinated against the flu when they were 10 days old. That's not really what's going on there. You've got two different issues that you're dealing with here, and I think you need to kind of clarify that. That requires a little bit of structure. On the structure, your transitions are way too harsh. It's like sharp right turn, sharp left turn. In the old days, we'd refer to them as a bat turn. You have to hit the parachute to turn the Batmobile, or got to shoot a hook out it because it's going so quickly. They feel very abrupt, and you need to make them a little bit more natural so that it flows more smoothly. There's information in the speech. I don't really get a lot of source citations on the information, but I could tell that you've got some research. But there's also some things that just seem like you're making assumptions here that people are trying to be earthy or healthy, and that's why they don't get vaccinations. I'm going, okay, maybe somebody says that this is true. I don't know that that's true. Maybe that's what your friend's experience was. Oh, we're trying to, be organic and natural and that sort of thing. If that's what they're saying, then use that as the example. I asked my friend why they didn't get their child. Oh, we want our child to grow up in a natural world without having all of this, chemicals involved in their lives, and we want it to be better. Okay, then I could see how that makes sense. I don't know that I would generalize from it, but at least I'd have an example. You're kind of starting with the premise that this is true, and it's like, really? I didn't know that this was something that people felt, and I think that that's a little bit awkward as a consequence. That there are maybe groups that are out there that are encouraging people to refrain from vaccinating their children. I think you could probably talk about that. If they are associated with health groups, that would be another way to make that particular argument and suggest that there's something there. I do think that you do a reasonable job in debunking the one study that connected vaccinations to autism. That's perfectly fine. You mentioned people might have religious objections, and I didn't hear any explanation of what those religious objections might be, so that's another one of those things that I don't think gets explained very clearly. On presentation things, let's see here. We once again have the disappearing hands trick. That's always amazing. Your legs get crossed a little bit awkwardly, so you never really look comfortable while you're up there speaking. Your eye contact's a little inconsistent. The pace of your presentation is sometimes interrupted by a few ums and ers, more than I thought was noticeable in the past, so that's, I think, problematic. All right, let's leave it there.